Well, I'm at work, and it's the same place I've been. This unit's been here since January, and the quietest place in the work is either in my car or in the bathroom. So I'm gonna make this quick video in the bathroom. So if you look around, there's a little stream out there. This is going to be more me talking about a little bit of a topic that I find really interesting, but I have to admit that I don't know very much about, and that is the biography of Barack Obama, and to what extent, if any, that can tell us something about the political process. First of all, I don't know very much about the biography of Barack Obama. It's surprising how little information has become at least generally known about his history, despite the fact that there actually has been enormous controversy about certain aspects of it, especially where he was born, which I'll admit right now, I don't know where he was born, and although it is certainly a meaningful question in terms of the constitutionality of his presidency, it would hardly be the only constitutional question regarding his presidency, and so not of quite the degree of importance that I think people put on it. But it's interesting that we know so little about him, at least that's generally known. You would think that somebody with his power and his fame, that we'd all know all kinds of details: where he went to high school, where he went to college, what kind of classes he took, what his professors were like, what kind of jobs he did, how he made a living for so many years. And quite frankly, most people don't know at all, or it's fairly vague. And just for how much power the president has, you would think that we would want to know all that stuff. And I'm not saying that it's a huge secret and nobody knows. It's just not generally known. Now, what got me interested in doing this video is I read a very brief article that was not by, but it was referencing John Lott. Now, I am somewhat familiar with John Lott. He wrote a very famous book called More Guns Equal Less Crime. He's not a gun rights person so much as an economist who just looked at the issue and said statistically, especially concealed carry seems to reduce crime, or at the very least it doesn't increase it, a violent crime that is. And he's a great scholar when it comes to gun rights, and he's kind of de facto been thrust into a role of being a gun rights advocate, even though I don't think that's really his forte or what he really is most interested in. That's just something that came about. Anyway, apparently he's written a new book just about the economics of the Obama administration, how they're bad. And in the book, he relates that he actually was a colleague of Obama for an overlap of 4 years in the 90s. They were both at the University of Chicago at the same time. I believe Lott is still there. Obama was there probably for either just 4 years or maybe he was there before Lott. I don't know. I actually had known that they were both there. I never put two and two together and wondered if they had ever met or anything. But I just found it very interesting because it was a brief snapshot of the pre-presidential Obama, because we all know him basically as a presidential candidate and then as a president. He was not a public figure really until he was just about to be elected to Senate, and I think that's also something. This is rather different than somebody, say, like Hillary Clinton, who was very much in the public eye for, what, 20 years or more prior to her losing the last election, or any number of the other congressmen or senators who run, who usually have been in office for years, even decades. You look at someone like Joe Biden or Chris Dodd, or someone like Kucinich. I mean, Kucinich, not to really compare him to Obama, but I mean, he was the mayor of Cleveland, I think, in the 70s. So we know what they've been up to for a long time. And I mean, if we look at Ron Paul, I mean, we know all kinds of stuff when he was in Congress, what his business was like. They basically have histories. Now, they're not complete. We don't know everything that everybody ever did. There's huge gaps, but with Obama, there isn't a lot of history, which is interesting. You think there should be more. He's younger, and so there's more documentation. from the period that, I mean, if you look at these older politicians, when they were born like in the 30s or 40s, there wasn't quite as much, data going around. But Lott said two things that were interesting. One of them, I think, which was what I think the article was really grasping on, was Lott's opinion that, as far as Obama was concerned, Obama had absolute disdain and contempt for John Lott and his ideas. I'm assuming relating to guns, although it could be at this time just economics in general. He said that they had several conversations, and they all ended with Obama turning his back on him and just walking away. They wouldn't shake hands, and he said it was very uncharacteristic. He said there are lots of people who disagreed with him in academia, but they'd at least be willing to have a thoughtful discussion, and Obama's attitude seemed to have been that you're beneath me, you're scum, and I shouldn't have to talk to you. This is something that Obama has sort of shown a couple times. Famously, when he was running, he was derisive towards people who want to cling to guns and Bibles. I think, and that was the little tidbit that the story was really focusing on. But the other tidbit that I actually thought was more interesting was that Lott says, I didn't actually see Obama that often. He wasn't around very much because he was always campaigning. And when he was hired, so I'm assuming Lott was there before Obama, but that wasn't made explicit, that it was made very clear to everybody, that, and I don't know, he didn't say by who, or you would assume by the administration of the university, that Obama was a politician and that his position as a lecturer, as a guest lecturer, was just some excuse for him to be there while he engineered or whatever his political goal. Now, I found that very interesting. To give you some idea of the career of this man, and I don't think that his career is really unique in this way. I've long felt that it's pretty clear that he was, at some point, basically selected for high office, including the presidency. If we look, I guess he was politically active in Chicago, and he was in the state house. I think his first time he was elected was like in the mid-90s, which is absurdly quick to when he got elected president. Most people spend literally decades in political careers before they even attempt to run for president, yet he rose extraordinarily fast. And it's not clear how. He never got amazing legislation passed. There's a number of other, I might hate them, but other politicians who, if you look at their political resume from a progressive point of view, are far better. I mean, even someone like, I don't want to name names because I hate them too much, but there are plenty of politicians out there who bring home a lot of pork that they can crow about, and it's not evident that he was successful in that way. He also ran for Congress against, I forget his name, his last name is Rush. He's a black congressman in Illinois, and he lost. I think that was in 2001, but I could be mistaken about that. Rush is still in Congress, by the way, or at least he was last I checked. And he's also one of the most anti-gun congressmen. But that's interesting. But then he gets tapped to run for Senate, which he ran against Alan Keyes, which is kind of like he's going to win, even though he probably would have won in Illinois anyway. And it was very clear to me that he was selected, and it depends how conspiratorial you are as to who does the selecting here. Was it the Trilateral Commission, or the Council on Foreign Relations, or was it just the Democratic Party? I don't know. Somebody did, because we know he was selected because he got vaulted onto the national stage because he gave the penultimate speech at the Democratic Convention in 2004. These conventions are, of course, very boring affairs. They get covered by the media, but typically, like CNN, Fox, when they cover them, they'll just do commentary all day, leading up to the final speech or two. The final speech, of course, is delivered by the nominee. So in 2004, that would have been John Kerry. The speech prior to them is basically their introduction speech. It's the penultimate speech in the series, and that's delivered basically by the most important August member of the party who's not going to be the nominee. Typically, that is a former president or former vice president. So someone like Bill Clinton or Al Gore, in the Republicans, you would expect somebody in the past like Ronald Reagan or George Bush, one or either of them, or perhaps the person who they just lost the nomination to. So like John McCain maybe, or something like that. But if you look at the list, it's president, president, vice president, vice president, and then that year it was state senator from Illinois, which is very, very interesting. And of course that launched him onto the public stage. Nobody pays attention to state politics. Sometimes it makes the news nationally here and there, but there are practically no state legislators who have a presence nationally, and Obama got that. True, not long before he became a senator from a powerful state, so that by itself would have been enough. But the granting of such notoriety to such, how many Democrats have higher rank than state senators from Illinois? Basically, all congressmen and all senators from all the states, all governors from all the states, all high cabinet members in this and previous administrations, and probably a big slew of lieutenant governors, attorney generals, and a cadre of politically powerful, if not nationally famous, state representatives. So the line of succession, so to speak, was clearly breached. And why is not clear. The comedian Jackie Mason, who of course is a bit of a neocon and a right-winger, but nonetheless has said interesting things about Obama that I found worthwhile, has commented, and I think quite correctly, that the stuff that he says is very part and parcel what all Democrats say, more or less. I mean, it's not like all Democrats are identical, but it's not that unique. It's not unique at all, actually. So why would his message be so acclaimed, whereas, and so fervently believed in, whereas, regular congressmen or senators who are Democrats, it's just not. And he points out that it's clearly the media hype of him. The media is hyping him enormously. And why? They might just like him. It is true the media has demonstrable bias in all sorts of different areas, not just towards Democrats or towards Obama, and that Obama fills a niche there. But the way Mason put it is, if he could say something literally identical to, say, Bush saying something, and they would say Bush is a moron, he's an idiot, and then Obama could say it, and be, oh, he's so eloquent and, philosophical or whatnot. And so I think it's interesting. This guy was pursuing a political career basically from the get-go. His whole life seems to have geared towards that, which at some point must be an indication of an ambition on his part. Since he doesn't have hereditary political connections, at least of the caliber that he's in now, you have to assume that he has the ambition for political power. This would be a little bit different, say, for George Bush. Like, maybe he wouldn't really have had ambitions for political office, but since his father was a president, it's almost expected of him that he at least be a governor of Texas. And we can find this, among the Kennedys, it's just kind of expected. Well, Obama doesn't hail from such a political family, of which there's only a few. There's a few on the national level. I'm sure if you go to the state level, it's quite common, but Obama doesn't come from that. The other kind of person, and that's someone who you'd expect someone like Bush to have a political career. Someone like Obama is clearly somebody who has political ambitions. But there's a lot of people who have political ambitions. There's a lot of people who covet political authority for not all the same reasons. I mean, they're all self-interested. Some people think that they'll gain financially. Some people think that they'll aggrandize their ego. Some people just want to fit in socially, and that's just, they see that as the highest social position they can hold. And some people think that they can, save the world by ruling over us. And for whatever reason, I think it's clear Obama sought political office, and I think for a long time he probably didn't stand out in any particular way among the legion of people who also want political office, including political high office. And I think at some point he must have come to the attention of somebody much more powerful than him. Again, Depends how conspiratorial you want to be. I don't know. I'll just say right out, I don't know who did it. At the very least, it had to be somebody within the Democratic Party. Beyond that, I have no evidence one way or the other, and it would be speculative. I could guess, but it would just be a guess. The Glenn Becks of the world would say George Soros, and I'd say that's almost certainly too, what's the word, superficial, really, reading of how politics work in the United States. But somebody saw him as opposed to all the other people seeking political power and office and said, that's our man. And why is not clear. Maybe they said that he has the ideology that we want, or maybe they thought, and this is what I personally think is more likely, he's got the right persona, he's got the right package. Part of it is that he's black, or at least half black, and there's a large segment of the populace who just is automatically going to defer to that and say, he's part black, we need a black president, this basically will undo all the injustice of slavery, which is absurd. Isn't it? First of all the people who were injured by slavery are dead, but let's just assume that they weren't, that they were still alive, and let's just assume that like reparations or something are a legitimate idea, or that there really is restitution owed to people right now because of slavery. How could electing somebody to office count as restitution? I don't understand. It couldn't possibly. It's like, oh, the Holocaust, our bad, here, we'll elect a Jew to the Reichstag. There. All better. No, not all better. But people believe that. A lot of people do. Not everybody, certainly, but a lot of people believe that. They say he's a good speaker. You know, if you listen to the rhetoric, I have a hard time, because when I listen, I don't listen to, man, most libertarians aren't going to listen to a political speech with the same degree of undiscerning way that most people do. I listen to it, like, this rhetoric's all over the place, it's inconsistent, I don't believe it, I mean, it's bad economics. When I hear him speak, that's all that pops into my head. This is whenever politicians speak, with the exception of Ron Paul, I just hear this is or Justin Amash or a few others. It's just, this is blather, and there's no reason for me to think anything other than this guy is either a fool, which is evidently not the case, or a liar, or likely a combination of the two. But so it's hard for me to identify with people who listen to it and just, oh, I want to hear that. I just don't understand. I don't get it. So when I hear him, I can't say he's a good speaker. Other people, I guess, they listen to it and they are moved by it. Maybe he delivers his speech well, at least well enough for the people who pass for an electorate in this country. And I just saw somebody posted on Facebook, it was an article from Czechoslovakia, it was pretty interesting. He said, the problem's not Obama, he's the king of fools, the problem is the fools that elected him. If people are so foolish that they're going to pick him, I mean, it would be one thing to have a bad president, but they'll be gone, their damage can be undone. But if you have such a huge number of people who are morons, it doesn't matter who the president is, it's going to be a disaster. So I guess I'm just really curious to know more about his political pedigree, to what degree his political philosophy is really there and is coherent, and not just whatever clothing he needs to wear to get elected. I'm curious as to the process by which he was selected. One wonders if it was ever so explicit that somebody approached him. And I should not single out Obama here. I think this is a process that we see with most presidents and even most people in high office who aren't presidents. Did somebody actually come to him and say, we have a deal for you, we have high hopes for you here, we'll endorse you and give you a speaking, give you national attention, give you a supplicant, media, all that sort of thing? Did that actually happen explicitly or explicitly, implicitly or explicitly? I don't know. I'd love to, and I'd love to know more about how he made his living, what he was doing. Like, we just don't know, and it's amazing that this guy is basically a mystery man can hold such power, or seemingly hold such power. So, and I'm just going to say, I don't know. I don't know. It's very hard to judge political philosophies of elected officials since they change so often and since they're so inarticulately voiced that making sense if they even have them is hard enough. But do you think, personally, I don't, the Glenn Becks seem to think that, well, he's a Marxist and he's a communist, which maybe he is, and then that's why he was picked. I think he might be those things, but if he was picked, it seems more likely to me that he would have been picked just because he's the right characterization. He's the right cartoon to put on TV and say, vote for this guy. That's my take, but I don't know. So, but I just thought it was really interesting that to have this reference to a pre-nationally recognized, by some years, by half a decade at least, Obama, and what he was like, and how it was clear even back then that he was at least personally grooming himself for an elected position, indeed higher office most likely, or he was being groomed. Because that's the interesting thing that wasn't made explicit was he said that it was made clear to them that that's why he was there. By who? Even if Obama was politically ambitious, that does not mean some university would come to him and say, "Oh, you're politically ambitious. Well, we'll just give you a cushy job for you to have some kind of aura of academic achievement, and then you can just pursue your political career as much as you like." And I mean, Lott said he was basically gone. He didn't have to do any research. He didn't really have to handle very much of a class load. He was gone most of the week campaigning, is what Lott said. And yet this was what was expected of him. So who were these people in the university, and who convinced them that it made sense to hire such a person? That seems to me an evidence of a selection of Obama by a higher, more powerful, established entity and or person, although almost certainly not a singular individual. Someone with the clout to have a university simply hire somebody just so that they could give them a stable on which to launch a political career or further a political career that maybe was already launched. And I found it kind of frustrating that the article was more talking about his anti-gun views, not this very interesting history of his political career, which appears to have been fostered by somebody or someone for a long time. And somebody, and not just somebody with, who knows, there might have been somebody when he was young who said, "Hey, I like him, wouldn't it be cool if he was president," and started donating to him. That's one thing. But somebody with the power to get a university like the University of Chicago to just give him a job to do nothing but further his own career, I mean, that takes some kind of wherewithal that the average person does not have. So I thought that was interesting, and if I ever get a chance, I'll try and ask John Lott that, although I doubt that I ever will. So that's it.